Now, this is the front page of the Sunday People, which claimed to be proud to be independent, and is priced £1.80 and is dated the 6th of September 2020. And the smaller piece is about David Attenborough saying we can still save the planet. So that's David Attenborough, hardly visible on the far left on the front page. Now, Gaza is, of course, Paul Gascoigne, the ex-footballer. And what they're doing is saying that this was a raid on his house, and there are fears that there was a tweet by Piers Morgan which might have triggered the raid on Gascoigne's home. Now, this is being important in Brick Lane, in London East 1, and in East London, and in the UK, in fact. And we shall be elaborating on the relationship and the importance in Brick Lane. Relationship with the evidence and the assessing of the damages and the impact of the theft and the agony. Now, if Gascoigne is in agony over anything, then it is quite likely can be linked to his ongoing state of mental health that is well documented and widely documented. So anything can trigger an agony or agonized response in him. But this one is giving an amount of the loss that has caused him agony. And they're quoting him as saying that the raiders went through lots of his personal stuff, including his will. And he says, I have so many memories attached to what was stolen. Now, what would happen if it wasn't just 140 pounds worth of jewel theft, but the contents stolen in the raid, as reported in the Sunday People, contained items of far more material or materially measured or measurable worth, say billions, worth billions. Would they call it agony, or would he have been already unable to even articulate a single word? Would he be in a state of total inability to speak? Now, what the jewels and the items of personal memories refer to can be found in the list that has been submitted since August, September. In fact, September 2012. submitted to the London High Court, claiming the theft of materials worth 4 or 5 billion pounds. Now, this is the second part, or part B of the diagnosis of the Sunday papers in Fleet Street today, which is in Greenwich Mean Time, just gone past midnight. So it is into the Monday. But the Sunday's papers, all the contents of his lost jewelry and other belongings, including personal memorabilia and memories, would not come anywhere near matching or equaling even a thousandth, 1,000th part of what has been stolen, was stolen and robbed at the end of August 2012 up to the 5th of September 2012 in Brick Lane. And what was stolen contained more than what is contained or can be found in the entire collection of libraries, including the British Library and the American Library of Congress. What was stolen, was stolen and robbed as part of a plan or a number of plans, and the thieves were invited to steal and rob the items, invited by the particular criminals that are known to and have been colluding with the London Borough of Towners Council. So what they stole exceeds, at this time, 2020 prices, 6 to 7 billion pounds. And the inventory is so long that it will take about 100 days of broadcast or verbal statements to cover. And what they stole contained verbatim evidence spanning 60 to 70 years, and evidence and contents, original contents of other original work and creation and thoughts, and collections of original materials that simply do not exist anywhere else. So this is the evidence that the London High Court was given starting from September 2012 for several years. What happened to those communications and those evidential representations and claims will be updated on in due course, but that is the context in which Paul Gascoigne's agony has to be seen. The assumption is that the big money and the big wealth and the big value, emphasis being on the value, big value only is to be found among the, quote, known wealthy, and not to be found in the ordinary people who are not known to be wealthy. Now, this wealth is not jewelry wealth. It's more valuable than jewelry or metals. It's intellectual wealth, original, created over 60, 70 years. Original, created every day. So, if each day spent in the creation is measured, just for an understanding, for value assessment, measured at the rate of the current 2020 prices charged for a day's retention of his advice by David Panic, one of the licensed law traders and members of the House of Peers, PEE-RS, Peers, House of Peers, then it is possible to begin to understand the money value, worth of what has been stolen. But it is beyond money value. It is beyond anything that can be measured in terms of money, pound, sterling, whatever currency. It is worth any number of lives across the world saved, would have been saved as a result of the direct application of the contents of the programs that were created over 70 years. So, when I say that the combined wealth of Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and any of their so-called Jeff Bezos, co-billionaires, the combined wealth of those billionaires that are known to be the bigger billionaires, bigger summed billionaires on the planet today, they won't match even a fraction of the worth of the materials, the wealth of intellect, the wealth of evidence stolen and robbed and hidden from Brick Lane area in August and September 2012. That is what I meant, and that is what I mean. And it is beyond the capacity of any single individual or any collection of individuals in place in the High Court of London to understand the magnitude of what the claim was. And it is exactly what the lead obstructor in the Queen's Bench division in the High Court said more than once. And the paradox, the dilemma is how then to get back such material, such resource, such intellectual, moral wealth by applying for redress from the English judicial bureaucracy. It is impossible. So when David Neuberger, the first president of the Supreme Court, boasted shortly after he was recruited by David Lidington to act as a propagandist for the cause of Brexit. When Neuberger boasted that London would become the capital, there would be the kind of very lucrative center for the world's litigants. That's what he meant. He meant that anyone, any of the crooks or any of the litigants from any part of the world who wanted to engage in trying their luck or whatever claims against their opponents or their targets, and to do so with on the basis of their wealth, then London was the best place for that, and London would be even better to be used as such an instrument, such a platform if Brexit, quote, succeeded. Of course, Monday's Financial Times is reporting exclusively, Monday, that is 7th of September 2020, is exclusively reporting that Boris Johnson is now abandoning the Brexit withdrawal treaty and many of its key terms. Now that creates a new atmosphere of unreliability about Johnson and his Brexiteering lying creepy crew. Now, if the Brexiteering withdrawal agreement is itself put at risk by the Brexiteers themselves, the Neuberger was obviously barking up the wrong tree, or he was barking up the kind of corrupted tree, because he had been given the script by David Lidington to praise a Brexiteering, a post-Brexit scenario, no matter how unreal or how untruthful or how dishonest. Now, it was unreal, untruthful, and dishonest now, because the Brexiteering front men and women are now abandoning the very withdrawal agreement that they boasted about just before they grabbed hold of the corrupt election dated the 12th of December 2019. No thanks to the garden gnome Jeremy Corbyn, who played along and gave Boris Johnson that landmark kind of opportunity to have a landslide, when Johnson should not have been given that opportunity, and Johnson would have crumbled by now, been out of office by now. But Corbyn, stupidity personified, gave in to Johnson and colluded with the holding of the election, instead of sticking to the principle created by Cameron for a 5-year term. If he had done that by now, Boris Johnson would have been out of the stop that he is now occupying, the spot in number 10 Downing Street. And he would have been stopped in his tracks. Now, all these evidence, all these facts, all these consequences, and all these sequences are at the center of the diagnosis that I present, and it is a diagnosis called the diagnosis of the Fleet Street Papers, but it's actually a diagnosis of more than just the papers, because it's a diagnosis of the corrupt emptiness at the center of the British establishment when it comes to delivering governance. And that again takes me back to David Neuberger and the fantasy English judiciary. When the trillion dollar worth of impact was jeopardized by the theft of billions of worth of wealth, intellectual wealth and materials from the Brick Lane area, the obvious due process, law and order course of action was to file claims in the High Court, because they cannot be dealt with as criminal cases, because the criminality is not as easily understood as the material property theft and hiding and concealing and the damages and all the rest of it. And it was simpler, far simpler as a process to apply to the High Court than it would have been to get the police to institute any criminal process. The police in this country are not known to be efficient in pursuing criminals and big crimes as all these big cases continue to prove, the train robbery and Brink Mask and all the other incidents, which raises the question about the police. The police have been overdue for a review, root and branch review in the policing, and it has not been done. And every branch of the policing is not functioning. And that includes the branch that is supposed to be in place to investigate big crimes. Now, the police have the personnel, because of the personnel consisting of the police and the institutional problem in delivering a proper policing service to this country. Because there is racism that is holding the police seriously, severely backwards from delivering the policing that the society has been in need of for at least half a century. And so therefore, there has to be the question, why doesn't the opposition demand a thorough review and replacement of the police that we have at the present time? Individual policemen and women are only doing what they're told. That is the basic general assumption. Of course, there are many hundreds of rotten apples inside the police, even if the general demography of the police were following, quote, rules. So the rotten apples are not held to account. And the existing codes and the purpose of the police is not accountable. And so there is a big gap, the biggest gap possible in society in terms of the social order. So there is no redress from the criminal procedure, and there is no redress from the civil procedure. And this headline, Gaza agony over 140K jewel theft, is just a headline. It doesn't seem to be destined to be investigated in a satisfactory way that would restore the stolen jewel theft and other stuff that have been stolen from Paul Gascoigne. And this is the only paper that is actually covering this in this way. The others are not. The others are all over the place with all kinds of contradictory statements about COVID, the virus, the pandemic, and the Boris Johnson fronted so-called governments. Total lack of care, total lack of ability, total lack of functionality, competence, and dedication to protect the population from this virus and, by definition, from other virus and attacks and all the rest of it. So the papers on Sunday, although we haven't gone page by page through the papers, essentially are empty. And here is so they're saying that the suggestion is that Piers Morgan tweeted that Paul Gascoigne was in the audience of a television show. And they're saying that that was a immediate kind of clue to the thieves and robbers to go and raid Gascoigne's house. Whether that was the case or not has not been established by independent investigation, but it is secondary. The point is that the Sunday people would not be interested in reporting what happened and what has happened and what has been getting worse in terms of the theft of the intellectual properties and other materials that were organized way, in an organized way, stolen and robbed and hidden starting in the end of August 2012 and continuing for a few months. And the impact of that, the Sunday people would not even understand. Just like the whole of Fleet Street, just like the entirety of the Brexiteering front doesn't understand the value and worth of society and the need for justice and fairness and accountability. So they will not be able to grasp what happened. And because it is such a complex series of facts, as I said, it would take 100 days to complete a listing of the inventory. I shall summarize here to say that we'll be continuing in the next editions about the impact and the implication and the meaning, and in the context of what actually is available, quote, for the public to use through the British Library and the Library of Congress in the USA and other such libraries still in place in the world. And this is now coming to midnight 21 hours GMT on Monday, the 7th of September 2020. We shall be coming back in the next edition, seriously going to be recorded in the next few hours.